Good evening, dear friend. Wherever you are tonight, welcome back. Tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? I love hearing from you all. Tonight, we continue our journey through the timeless tales of 1001 Nights. Stories whispered beneath desert stars, where adventure, magic, and mystery await. So relax, breathe softly, and let the story unfold. The story of Nur al-Din, Ali and Badr al-Din, Hasan. Once upon a time, under the gracious rule of the commander of the faithful, there lived in the land of Egypt a king, both wise and kind. His heart was generous, his spirit gentle, and his reign brought peace to his people. Neighboring kingdoms held him in high esteem, for he governed with justice and compassion. He cared for the poor and honored the learned, raising men of talent to positions of trust within his court. Among his most valued servants was a grand vizier, a man of great prudence and depth, whose knowledge spanned both letters and science. This vizier had 2 sons, noble in bearing and mind, each resembling their father in both looks and character. The elder was called Scheherazade Mohammed, and the younger Nuruddin Ali, a youth blessed with every virtue under the sun. When their father passed away, the king summoned the 2 brothers to court. "My sorrow for your father is as deep as yours," said the king, his voice heavy with kindness. "To honor his memory, I will raise you both to the same rank he once held. I have heard of your affection for one another, and I trust you will serve me as faithfully as he did." The brothers bowed low, thanked the king, and returned home to arrange their father's funeral. A month of mourning passed. Then they returned to court and took up their new duties side by side. Each day they served the king together, and when his majesty went out hunting, one of them would accompany him, taking turns in that honorable duty. One evening, after supper, the brothers sat together in quiet conversation. The next morning, the elder was to ride with the king. He spoke first, smiling at his brother. "Brother," he said, "neither of us is married, and yet we live in such harmony. I have thought of something. Why not take 2 sisters for wives, from a family worthy of our name? We could hold one grand wedding together. What say you?" Nuruddin's face brightened. "Your thought is truly delightful," he replied. "It suits the bond we share. I couldn't agree more. Whatever pleases you, my brother, pleases me as well." "But wait," said Scheherazade, his imagination alight. "Suppose our brides should conceive on the same night, and by God's grace deliver on the same day, yours a son and mine a daughter. Then we shall betroth them to each other, uniting our families forever." "What a splendid dream!" laughed Nureddin. "It would bind us even closer. But tell me, my brother, what dowry would you have my son present to your daughter?" "That's easy," said Scheherazade confidently. "Besides the usual wedding gifts, I would expect nothing less than 3,000 sequins, 3 estates, and 3 servants." Nureddin chuckled. "Agreed. But since men are worth more than women, perhaps it should be you who provides a greater dowry. Your daughter would be lucky indeed to wed my son." Though said in jest, these words wounded Scheherazad's pride. His face darkened. "How dare you?" he cried. "Do you mean to say your son is more deserving than my daughter? And who told you that we are equals in rank? You forget yourself, brother. Never will my daughter marry your son, not for all your gold, nor your whole estate." And so, a foolish quarrel rose between them over a marriage between children not yet born. Words turned sharp. Tempers flared. Scheherazade struck the table and shouted, "Were it not for tomorrow's hunt, I would teach you a lesson this very night. But when I return, you shall learn what it means to speak so insolently to your elder." He stormed away to his chamber, leaving Nureddin silent and troubled. That night, sleep would not come. His heart was heavy. "How can I live beside a brother who treats me with such disdain?" he thought. Before dawn, he made his choice. He ordered a mule saddled, filled a small bag with jewels, packed a little food, and set off alone. To his household, he said only that he had business away from Cairo for a few days. Across the golden sands he rode, bound for the land of Arabia. But halfway through the desert, his mule fell dead beneath the burning sun. So he walked on foot until, by chance, he met a kind traveler on horseback journeying to Balsora. The stranger took pity on him and offered a seat behind. When they reached the city, Nureddin thanked his rescuer and went his way. As he wandered through the bustling streets, uncertain where to rest, he saw a procession approach, a stately man surrounded by guards and attendants. The people bowed deeply as he passed, waiting until he had gone before resuming their errands. Nureddin followed their example. The man was none other than the Grand Vizier of Balsora, out inspecting the order of the city. His eye fell upon the young traveler standing humbly by the road. Seeing his fine bearing beneath the dust of travel, he drew rein and said kindly, "Stranger, who are you? And from where do you come?" Nureddin Ali bowed and said, "Your Excellency, I am an Egyptian, born in Cairo, but grief has driven me from my home, grief caused by one of my own kin. I have sworn never to return, and would rather perish upon the road than see my homeland again." The vizier was an elderly man of noble bearing. Hearing this, he spoke gently. "My son, never make such a vow. The world is vast, and sorrow hides in every corner of it. You do not yet know what trials lie ahead. Come with me instead. I will help you forget the weight that presses upon your heart." So Nureddin Ali followed the vizier to his house in Basora. It was not long before the old man saw the young traveler's good heart and fine manners. One evening, when they sat together in quiet conversation, the vizier said, "My son, you see how old I have grown. My years are nearly spent, and I have but one child, a daughter as fair as you are handsome. Many powerful families have asked for her hand, yet I have promised her to no one. I have come to think of you as a son, and would gladly call you my son-in-law. If you consent, I shall speak to our king and ask his blessing for the match, that you may one day inherit my title and serve as Grand Vizier after me. My wealth, my duties, and my trust will all pass to you." When the kind old man had spoken these generous words, Nureddin Ali fell to his knees, kissed the vizier's hand, and declared with deep gratitude that he would obey in all things. Then the vizier summoned his servants, commanding them to adorn the mansion with garlands and prepare a great feast. Invitations were sent to every noble of the city. When the guests had gathered, the vizier waited until the young man's grace and virtue were known to all before he rose and addressed them. "My honored friends," he said, "today I share with you a secret long kept. I have a cousin who serves as Grand Vizier to the King of Egypt, just as I serve our King of Basora. He has sent his only son to marry my daughter, that our family lines may grow closer. It is this noble youth before you. I beg you all to join us in celebrating their wedding, which shall take place this very day." The nobles nodded in approval, saying that the vizier's choice was wise, and each wished the young couple happiness, long life, and many children. Then the feasting began. Cups were raised, music played, and laughter filled the hall until the stars shone above the city. When the banquet ended, the scribes entered with the marriage contract, and every guest signed as witness before departing in joy. After the crowd had gone, the vizier ordered that the bridegroom be taken to the bath. The servants prepared fine garments, fragrant oils, and fresh linen. When Nureddin Ali emerged, cleansed and dressed in robes of silk, he came before the vizier once more. The old man smiled, pleased by his son-in-law's noble appearance. "Now, my son," said he, "you have told me who you are and of your place in the court of Egypt. But you have also spoken of a quarrel with your elder brother. I would have you trust me completely. Tell me what passed between you." So Nur-ed-Din Ali recounted the whole story of his dispute with Shemseddin Mohammed. The old vizier could not help but laugh. "Ah, what a foolish quarrel that was," he said. "All this trouble, and all for a marriage imagined in jest. Yet I thank heaven for it, for through that folly I have gained a son such as you. But come, the night grows late. Your bride awaits you. Tomorrow I shall take you before the king, and I am certain he will receive you kindly." That night, Nur-ed-Din Ali went to his bride's chamber, and so their life together began. Then the storyteller Ja'far said to Caliph Harun al-Rashid, "And the strangest thing, O Commander of the Faithful, is that on the very day Nur-ed-Din Ali was wed in Basora, his brother Shemseddin Mohammed was married in Cairo." He went on to tell how, after Nur-ed-Din's departure, Shemseddin had accompanied the king of Egypt on a month-long hunt. Upon returning, he discovered that his brother had vanished. Regret and sorrow filled his heart, for he knew his own words had driven the young man away. Messengers were sent to search across Damascus and Aleppo, but Nur-ed-Din was already far to the east in Basora, when no trace of him could be found. Shemseddin resolved at last to take a wife himself, the daughter of one of Cairo's most noble ministers, and by fate, it happened on the same day his brother was married. Yet that was not the end of their story, said Ja'far. For after 9 months had passed, Shemseddin's wife bore him a daughter in Cairo. And on that very same day, Nur-ed-Din's wife in Basora gave birth to a son. The boy Berezdin Hasan. The old vizier rejoiced greatly, gave alms to the poor, and held splendid feasts in celebration. Later, to show his love and pride, he went before the king and said humbly, "My lord, grant that my son-in-law succeed me as Grand Vizier, that I may die content, knowing my house will continue, though I have no son of my own." The king, who already held Nur-ed-Din in high esteem, agreed at once. He had the robes of office brought forth and placed upon the young man before the court. From that day on, Nur-ed-Din Ali governed wisely and with honor. The old vizier lived 4 more happy years and died in peace, knowing his legacy was safe. And when little Berezdin Hasan turned 7, his father chose for him a fine tutor, a man of great wisdom. The child proved bright beyond his years, learning eagerly whatever was set before him, as though the stars themselves whispered knowledge into his dreams. only 2 years after being entrusted to his tutor, the boy could already read and write with ease and had learned the holy verses of the Quran by heart. Nur-ad-Din Ali, ever the devoted father, summoned still more learned men to refine his son's education. So swiftly did the boy's mind blossom that by the age of 12, he scarcely needed guidance at all, and all who beheld him could not help but marvel and praise. Until that time, Nur-ad-Din Ali had thought of nothing but his son's schooling. The boy had yet to see the world beyond the garden walls. Now, at last, the father brought him before the royal court, that he might bow before the king. The sovereign received the child with rare kindness, and when they returned to the streets, people stopped to gaze after him, blessing his future with heartfelt words. Nur-ad-Din Ali meant to raise a worthy successor, one who would follow his path in wisdom and honor. He spared no effort, letting the boy take part in affairs of state and entrusting him even with the most difficult matters, so that he might learn by doing. And just as the father began to see the fruit of his patient labor, fate struck. A grievous illness laid him low. The sickness was so harsh that Nur-ad-Din knew his days were drawing to an end. He faced death calmly, desiring only to depart this world with the dignity of a good and faithful man. As his strength ebbed away, his thoughts clung to his beloved son. He called Baradin Hasan to his bedside and said, "My child, you see for yourself, nothing on this earth endures. Only the place to which I go is eternal. From this hour, prepare yourself to one day follow me there. Live so that, when your time comes, you may leave without regret, without shame upon your conscience, without a single duty left undone. You have been taught how to live rightly. Your books have shown you the way. But listen now to the few words a father must say for his son's own good. Every man must know where he comes from. You will not understand yourself until you know who your father was. I was born in Egypt. My father, your grandfather, was Vizier to the king of that land. I myself once served as a royal counselor beside your uncle, Shemseddin Mohammed, who I believe still lives. Circumstance forced me to leave him and make my way to this country, where I rose to the rank I now hold. All this and more you will learn when you read the small book I have written for you." Then Nur-ad-Din Ali drew from beneath his pillow a leather-bound notebook, covered in his own neat hand. He placed it in Baradin's trembling fingers. "Keep it safe," he whispered. "Read it when you are ready. Within it are the days of my life, our joys, your mother's name, the hour of your birth. Guard it well. It will serve you when I am gone. Tears streamed down Baradin Hasan's cheeks as he took the book and promised never to part from it. His father lay pale and faint, so weak that one might have thought his last breath already spent. Yet he gathered his will once more and continued, "My son, the first wisdom I would leave you is this: be sparing in your friendships. It is safest to dwell first within yourself and not to reveal your heart too easily. The second, never use force against another. Violence, once begun, returns upon the hand that dealt it. Treat life as you would a creditor, whose mercy you must earn, with patience, kindness, and forbearance. The third, when insulted, hold your tongue. He who keeps silence in misfortune will see the storm pass. A poet once said that silence is both a jewel and a shield. Speak little, for words can be a tempest that ruins the harvest. None ever regretted being silent, yet many have rued a hasty word. The fourth, shun drunkenness, for it is the root of every vice. The fifth, be prudent with your wealth. If you are neither wasteful nor miserly, you will never want for friends. Even a small fortune will suffice if you spend wisely. But riches without moderation will leave you deserted. Thus spoke Nur ad-Din Ali, teaching and guiding even as the shadow of death fell across him. When at last his voice grew still, the city mourned him deeply, and his funeral was held with solemn honor and love. When the tale had reached this point, Scheherazade turned to King Shahryar and said softly, "My lord, the Vizier Jafar saw that your majesty took great delight in the story of Nur al-Din Ali." And so he continued, "Now, the funeral of Nur al-Din Ali was held with the highest honor and ceremony. His son, Badr al-Din Hasan of Basra, for that was the city where he had been born and raised, mourned his father bitterly, though custom required only a month of mourning. The young man shut himself away for twice that time. He spoke to no one, not even to the king whose service he held, and the court saw him no more. But the king of Basra grew angry. To him, the long absence seemed an insult, a sign of pride against the throne itself. In wrath, he appointed a new vizier in Nur al-Din's place and sent him forth with soldiers to seize the house, the land, and every possession of the dead man, leaving not a coin to his son, Badr al-Din Hasan, and worse still, to take the boy in chains. The new vizier marched with many guards through the streets. Among the crowd, a faithful servant overheard the order and, trembling, ran home to his master. He found the young man seated in sorrow beneath the house's archway, falling to the ground, he kissed the hem of his master's robe and cried breathlessly, "My lord, flee! Flee at once!" Badr al-Din lifted his weary eyes. "Why? What news have you brought?" "The king's fury burns against you," the servant gasped. "Even now, the Vizier rides here to seize your house and throw you into prison. Go, there is no time." For a moment, the youth stood lost. "At least let me gather some gold, some jewels." "No, my lord. The soldiers will be here in an instant. Save yourself while you can." And so, Badr al-Din rose, slipped his feet into sandals, flung a cloak across his face, and fled into the darkening streets, not knowing whither he ran, only that he must reach the city gate before the trap closed behind him. He ran until he reached the great cemetery beyond the walls. Dusk was falling. Then he thought, "I will hide through the night in my father's tomb." Now that tomb had a high-arched roof, fair and stately, built by Nur al-Din in his lifetime. On the way there, Badr al-Din met a wealthy old Jew named Isaac, a lender and merchant returning from his day's trade. The old man halted, bowed deeply, and kissed the young noble's hand. "My lord," he said, "forgive my boldness. But why do you walk abroad alone at such an hour? And why does your face look so troubled? Has sorrow visited you?" Badr al-Din answered quickly, "I dreamt of my father just now. His face was grave, as though displeased with me. I awoke in dread and came to pray for his soul." The Jew Isaac knew nothing of the danger that hung over the youth, and spoke eagerly. "Your noble father, may God rest him, had purchased many goods now arriving by ship for the port of Basra. They are yours by right, my lord. Grant me the favor of buying them from you. I can pay in full, even in advance. Here, let me give you 1,000 sequins as earnest for the first cargo that reaches the harbor." He drew from beneath his cloak a heavy purse sealed with his own mark. Poor Badr al-Din, cast out from his home with not a coin in his hand, saw in this offer a mercy from heaven itself. He accepted gladly. "So then," said Isaac, "you will sell to me the goods of the first ship for 1,000 sequins?" "Yes," replied the youth, "for 1,000 sequins. It is agreed." The Jew handed over the purse. Badr al-Din would not even count it. "I trust you," he said. "Then write me a note," urged the old man, producing paper, pen, and ink from his leather pouch. And Badr al-Din wrote, "I, Badr al-Din Hasan of Basra, hereby sell to the Jew Isaac, for the price of 1,000 sequins, all the merchandise aboard the first of my ships now approaching the port. Payment received in full." He signed, and gave the paper to Isaac, who bowed, tucked it carefully away, and departed toward the city. Alone once more, the young man reached his father's tomb. There he fell upon the marble floor, weeping until his tears ran dry. Alas, Badr al-Din, wretched child, what fate awaits you now? You have lost your father, and the king has turned against you. Where will you find shelter in a world so cruel? He knelt a long while, then at last, spent with grief, sank down beside the grave and slept. And it happened that a spirit of the cemetery, who left his dwelling each night to wander the world, returned and found the youth lying there beneath the vaulted dome. The spirit paused, struck with wonder at the beauty of the sleeper. Surely, he whispered, this must be an angel of heaven, sent to drive mortals mad with the sight of such perfection. Long he gazed upon the sleeping face. Then, lifting his wings, he rose into the air and soon met a fairy passing through the night. Come, said the spirit to her, fly down with me to the graveyard, and I shall show you a marvel, a mortal so fair that even you will stand amazed. So together they descended and entered the tomb, where Badr al-Din Hasan lay bathed in moonlight. Look, said the spirit, have you ever beheld such beauty in all the realms of men or jinn? The fairy gazed for a long while at the sleeping youth, then turned to the spirit beside her and said softly, I must confess, this young man is remarkably handsome. Yet, not long ago in Cairo, I beheld a mortal even more wondrous. If you wish, I shall tell you of him. I am listening, replied the spirit. So the fairy began her tale. In the land of Egypt, there reigned a mighty king, whose grand vizier was named Scheherazade Mohammed. He had a daughter of 19 or 20 years, the loveliest creature ever born beneath the sun. Her beauty was spoken of in whispers throughout the realm, until the king himself grew curious. One day, he summoned the vizier and said, I have heard tell of the peerless charm of your daughter. She is of age, and I wish to take her as my queen. Will you give her to me? The vizier, startled by so unexpected an offer, bowed low. Instead of rejoicing as any man might have done, he answered humbly, Majesty, I am unworthy of such an honor. Permit me, I beg, to decline. I have a younger brother, Nuruddin Ali, once also your loyal servant. Long ago he quarreled with me and went away, and only 4 days past I heard that he died in Basora, where he had served as vizier to another king. He has left behind a son, and my brother and I once vowed that if one of us had a son and the other a daughter, they should wed. I believe my brother's dying wish would be to see that promise fulfilled. Therefore, O King, show grace and allow me to keep faith with the dead. There are many noblemen in your court with daughters fit to be your bride. Grant your favor to one of them." The king of Egypt, hearing these words, was seized with fury. His pride burned like fire. "So," he cried, "you repay my kindness with scorn, because you dare imagine any man worthier than I. Your daughter shall marry none but the ugliest and basest of my slaves." With that, the king dismissed the vizier, who returned home humiliated and grief-stricken. Now, on this very day, the fairy continued, the king summoned a hideous groom from his stables, a hump-backed, crooked creature whose sight could chill the blood. He forced the vizier to consent, commanded the judges to draw up a marriage contract, and had witnesses sign before his throne. The wedding was prepared in haste. Torches lined the streets, slaves gathered before the bathhouse, and the hunchback was even then within, bathing before being led to his bride. I saw the young girl myself before I left Cairo, so radiant that no eye could behold her without wonder. Yet she was to be given to that wretched man. When the fairy ended, the spirit said, "Be that as it may, I cannot believe her beauty surpasses that of the youth who lies here." "I will not argue," said the fairy gently. "But surely this handsome young man deserves her far more than that deformed groom. Let us exchange them. It will be justice for the wronged, and defiance against the king's cruelty." "You speak wisely," said the spirit. "Let us comfort a grieving father and turn sorrow into joy. I will bear the youth to Cairo without waking him. When our work is done, you shall return him whence he came." Having agreed, the fairy lifted young bedridden Hasan in her arms and soared with him through the night. Swift as a breath, she crossed the skies and set him down beside the bathhouse where the hunchback was to emerge. There the spirit touched the youth, who woke in astonishment, finding himself in a strange city. He would have cried out, but the spirit laid a finger to his lips and whispered, "Be silent. Take this torch, join the crowd before the bathhouse, and walk with them to the wedding. The groom is a hunchback. You will know him at once. Keep to his right side. Take the purse at your belt and scatter gold among the musicians and dancers. When you enter the bridal chamber, give gifts again to the servants who attend the bride. Each time you draw coins, take a handful. Do not count. Act calmly and fear no one. Heaven protects you." Bedridden Hasan did as he was told. Lighting his torch from that of a slave, he slipped among the throng as though he were an attendant of some noble house. The hunchback soon appeared, astride one of the king's own horses, and the procession began through the torch-lit streets. The young man followed close behind the music and the dancers, tossing silver and gold with a grace that delighted all who saw him. His beauty shone like a light among them, and many turned their eyes from the ugly groom to gaze instead upon him. At last, they reached the Vizier's mansion. The guards barred those with torches, admitting only the musicians. But the players refused to enter without the gracious stranger who had showered them with gifts. "He is no servant," they said. "He must be a traveler who longs to see our customs." And so they drew him inside. They placed him at the groom's right hand upon a gilded seat beside the sorrowful bride. The maiden sat adorned in silks and jewels, but her face was pale with misery. One needed no words to know her heart. The women of rank who filled the hall, wives of viziers, nobles, and generals, watched in wonder. When Bedreddin Hasan entered, they all turned to look. His bearing, his face, his very presence were so noble that they whispered among themselves, "Surely that fair youth, not the monster beside him, is the one worthy of the bride." Murmurs spread like a breeze through the room, and even laughter rose as they mocked the hapless hunchback, whose anger only made the scene more absurd. Music swelled again. The feast resumed, and the women who attended the bride moved forward to begin the final rites of the strange, fated wedding night. According to custom, the bride was to change her dress 7 times. Each time she rose and walked to and fro before the groom, yet she never once cast her eyes upon the hunchback. Instead, she glided again and again before Bedreddin Hasan, as though to show him each new gown she wore. And each time, remembering the words of the divine spirit, the young man reached into his purse and scattered handfuls of gold among the ladies attending the bride. He did not forget the musicians and dancers either. For them too, he flung bright coins with a generous hand. The guests scrambled and laughed, chasing the glittering pieces that rolled across the floor. When they picked one up, they turned toward Bedreddin with a grateful gesture. Some even nodded as if to say, "You should be the groom, not that misshapen creature." The women surrounding the bride whispered the same, paying no heed to whether the hunchback heard or not. Some even played little tricks on him, and the onlookers could not help but burst out laughing. When the last gown had been shown, the music ceased, and the players gathered their instruments. They winked at Bedreddin, urging him with their eyes to stay. Then the bridesmaids and all who were not of the household departed, one by one. The bride withdrew to her chamber to change again, followed only by her maidservants. Soon, in the great hall, only 2 men remained, the hunchbacked groom and Bedreddin Hasan. The hunchback, still smarting from shame, glared at the young man and barked, "And you? Why do you linger? Have you not seen enough? Go, be gone with the rest." Bedreddin hesitated, for indeed there was no reason to stay. He turned to leave, but before he reached the corridor, the divine spirit and the fairy appeared, radiant as dawn. "Where are you going?" they asked softly. "Stay. The hunchback has stepped out on an errand. Return now to the bridal chamber. When you are alone with the bride, speak boldly and tell her that you are her true husband. Say that what happened before was but the king's jest to mock the hunchback for his vanity. Tell her that you've sent him a fine dish of cream to enjoy in his stable, and that he will trouble her no more. Be confident, your manner and grace will win her trust. While you speak, we shall see to it that the hunchback cannot enter, for she is your wife, and yours alone." Indeed, the hunchback had gone outside. Then the divine spirit took the form of a great black cat and sprang before him, screeching wildly. The man clapped his hands, shouting, "Begone, foul beast!" But the cat did not move. It reared upon its hind legs, its eyes burning like twin embers, and howled all the louder. Its body swelled, growing larger, first like a dog, then like a young donkey. The hunchback trembled, tried to call for help, but terror froze his voice. The creature swelled again until it stood before him as a raging bull. Its voice thundered, "Wretched hunchback, how dare you wed the woman who belongs to me?" The man collapsed in fear, covering his face with his cloak. "Mercy, mighty bull," he stammered. "I knew not what I did. Spare me, and I shall obey your every command." "Listen well," growled the spirit. "If you move from this place, or utter one word before sunrise, I will smash your skull to pieces. When the morning comes, you shall go, but never look back. And if ever you dare return, your life is forfeit." With that, the spirit seized the hunchback by his legs and planted him upside down against the wall like a stalk in the earth. "Move an inch before dawn," he warned, "and I'll dash your head to bits." Meanwhile, Bedreddin Hasan, encouraged by the fairy's words, slipped quietly into the bridal chamber and waited. After a short while, an old woman led the bride to the door, but she did not look inside. She murmured her blessings and gently pushed the girl in before shutting the door behind her. The young lady gasped when she saw not the misshapen groom, but the handsome stranger she had noticed earlier, the graceful Bedreddin himself. "Well now, good sir," she said in surprise, "are you still here? Perhaps you are a friend of my husband." "No, my lady," replied Bedreddin. "I would never compare myself to that pitiful hunchback." "Careful," she said with a faint smile. "You speak ill of my husband." "That creature, your husband?" Bedreddin laughed softly. "Ah, you are deceived. The king only played a jest on your father's household to make sport of that fool. In truth, it was decreed that I should wed you. Did you not see how everyone rejoiced at the trick? The musicians, the dancers, even your maids, all delighted by the game. The hunchback now eats his porridge in the stable, and he will never stand before your lovely eyes again." At this, the bride, who had entered the room pale and sorrowful, felt her face brighten like the morning sun. She smiled so radiantly that Bedreddin's heart leapt. "I never dreamed of such joy," she whispered. "I thought my fate sealed in misery forever. But now, to find that you are the one destined for me, my heart can hardly bear such happiness." She finished removing her finery and lay down upon the bridal bed. Bedreddin, overcome with wonder at her beauty, quickly cast off his cloak and joined her. His purse of gold lay heavy upon the chair, still full as before by the grace of the Spirit. When both had fallen into deep and peaceful sleep, the fairy turned to the divine spirit and said, "Now, dear friend, do as we planned. Carry him away quietly, that no one shall see or wake." So the spirit entered the chamber, lifted the slumbering Bedreddin, clad only in his thin garments, and soared through the night sky to the distant city of Damascus in Syria. There, just as the call to morning prayer began to echo, he laid the young man gently by the city gate and vanished with the fairy into the dawn. When the gates opened, townsfolk waiting to go out were astonished to see a handsome stranger lying fast asleep on the ground, dressed only in his underclothes. "He must have fled from a lover's house," one man joked. "Or perhaps," said another, "he drank too much and lost his way home." They laughed and guessed, but no one knew the truth. A soft breeze lifted the corner of Bedreddin's shirt, and those nearest gasped at the sight of his fair, noble form. Their chatter roused him at last. Bedreddin blinked in the sunlight, bewildered to find himself beneath a strange gate, surrounded by curious faces in a city he had never seen before. The young man spoke. "My lords, please tell me, where am I, and what do you want of me?" One of the bystanders replied, "Young fellow, the city gates have only just opened. We came out and found you lying here, dressed as you are. so we stopped to look. Did you sleep here all night? Do you not know this is one of the main gates of Damascus?" "At the gates of Damascus?" he exclaimed. "You're jesting with me. Last night I slept in Cairo." At these words, a few people pitied him, believing such a fine young man must have lost his senses. They shook their heads and went on their way. An old man stepped forward and said, "My son, you speak without reason. If you stand here in Damascus this morning, how could you have slept last night in Cairo? That is impossible." The old man's words made the others laugh aloud. "He's mad! The poor fool is mad!" they cried. Yet some looked upon him kindly, for he seemed so bewildered and young. Another man said gently, "My boy, perhaps you've been forgetful and not thought through what you said. How could any man be in Basora by day, go to bed in Cairo, and wake up in Damascus? You're still half asleep. Wake yourself properly." But the youth persisted. "What I said is true. Last night I was wed to my bride in Cairo." Those who had laughed before now roared even louder. The old man shook his head. "You must have dreamed, and now you take your dream for truth." But the young man, whose name was Bedreddin Hasan, cried out, "I know well what I am saying. How could I have dreamed it? Last night they brought me my bride. I saw her change garments 7 times, and there was even a hideous hunchback whom they meant her to marry instead. Tell me, where are my outer robe, my turban, and the purse of gold I carried?" Though he spoke with conviction, the crowd only laughed the more until he grew confused and frightened. He rose and walked toward the city, followed by many shouting, "A madman! A madman!" Their cries drew others to windows and doorways, until a great crowd followed, jeering and echoing the cry, "A madman! A madman!" Distraught, the young man darted through the door of a pastry shop that had just opened, hoping to hide. Now the pastry cook had once been the leader of a band of robbers who plundered caravans in the desert. Since settling in Damascus, he had lived honestly, yet those who knew his past still feared him. Seeing the mob outside, he fixed them with a stern gaze, and one by one they slipped away. Left alone with the youth, he asked who he was and what had brought him to Damascus. Bedreddin Hasan told his tale truthfully. From his noble birth and his father's death, to his leaving Basora, to the strange wedding in Cairo after sleeping by his father's tomb. He ended in despair, unable to comprehend how he now found himself in Damascus that very morning. The pastry cook said, "Your story is indeed strange, my son, but heed my counsel. Tell it to no one else. Wait until heaven takes pity and lifts your sorrow. Meanwhile, stay here with me. I have no child. If you wish, I will take you as my son. Then you may walk this city freely, without mockery or harm. Though it was no great honor for a vizier's son to be adopted by a pastry maker, Bedreddin saw no other way. The man gave him clothes, called witnesses, and took him to the judge to declare him his adopted son. From then on, Bedreddin lived under the simple name Hasan and learned the art of pastry making. While these things passed in Damascus, in far-off Cairo, the vizier's daughter, newly a bride, awoke after her wedding night. Finding Bedreddin gone, she thought he had stepped out quietly so as not to disturb her sleep, and would soon return. She was still waiting when her father, Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed, came knocking, humiliated by the king's cruel jest the previous night. He came to lament his shame before his daughter. Hearing his voice, she hurried joyfully to open the door, kissed his hand, and greeted him with a smile so radiant that he stood astonished. He had expected tears or bitter complaint. His anger flared. "Shameless girl," he cried. "After such disgrace, how dare you look so content?" Startled, she pleaded, "Father, please do not scold me. I did not wed that hateful hunchback. They mocked him until he fled, and a young man took his place. He is my true husband." "What nonsense is this?" shouted the vizier. "Did not the hunchback sleep beside you last night?" "No, father," she replied earnestly. "I slept beside the young man I told you of. He has great dark eyes and long lashes." At this, the vizier lost all patience. "Wretched girl, will you drive me mad with your foolish tales?" "Not I, father. You will drive me mad by refusing to believe me." "And the hunchback, let him be, that miserable creature," she broke in. "Must I hear of him forever? I tell you again, father, last night I lay not with the hunchback, but with my handsome husband, who must still be somewhere nearby." The vizier strode out, determined to find this mysterious son-in-law, and to his astonishment, came upon the hunchback standing on his head, legs flailing in the air, exactly as the spirits had left him the night before. "What in heaven's name is this?" cried the vizier. "Who put you in such a posture?" The hunchback, recognizing him, groaned and answered, "Ah, so it is you, my lord vizier," cried the hunchback, trembling. "You would have me wed the mistress of a monstrous buffalo, the consort of a demon's own beloved? No, sir, I shall not fall into your snare a second time." Scheherazade Mohammed frowned, finding the man's words offensive. "Stand upright and speak properly," he commanded. "I dare not, unless the sun has already risen." the hunchback replied. Know, my lord, that last night, as I came this way, a black cat appeared before me, and grew until it became a terrible buffalo. I have not forgotten its warning. Go, I pray you, about your business, and leave my wretched soul in peace. But the vizier would not leave him. Grasping the hunchback by the leg, he forced him upright. No sooner was the fellow on his feet than he bolted away like a startled hare, not daring to look back once. He ran straight to the royal palace, begged an audience with the king of Egypt, and poured out his tale of how the dread spirit had tormented him. The king laughed heartily at the story. Meanwhile, Semseddin Mohammed returned home, troubled and bewildered. Daughter, said he, tell me plainly all that has passed. My mind is in great confusion. Father, answered the young lady gently, I have nothing more to tell than what you already know. But look, my husband's robe and turban still lie upon that chair. You will see for yourself. She took up the garments and handed them to her father. The vizier examined them carefully. This turban, he mused, were it not now the fashion in Mosul, I might think it belonged to some minister of state. Then, feeling something stiff beneath the lining, he drew forth a small notebook. It was the very keepsake that Nuruddin Ali had given his son before he died, hidden there for safekeeping. Opening it, Semseddin recognized at once his brother's handwriting. On the first page were the words, For my son, Bedreddin Hasan. Before he could collect his thoughts, his daughter brought him another object, the purse she had found beneath her husband's cloak. It was heavy with gold sequins, though Bedreddin had given generously to all around him. By the blessing of genies and fairies, the purse had never emptied. On its side was written, the 1,000-sequin purse belonging to the Jewish merchant Isaac. Inside lay also a receipt, written in the merchant's hand. This purse of 1,000 sequins is delivered to Bedreddin Hasan in payment for the goods aboard the ship that shall first arrive from the fleet of Nuruddin Ali, his late father. When Semseddin had read these words, he fell senseless to the ground. His daughter and the servants rushed to his aid. At length, he revived and said, My child, you must not wonder that I fainted at the sight of these writings. The truth is beyond belief. The man you married, he was your cousin, the son of my brother, Nuruddin Ali. This purse recalls the very quarrel that parted us long ago. It was meant as your bridal gift. Praise be to the Almighty, whose power reunites what was once divided. He kissed again and again the letters of his brother's hand. "Ah, Nur-ad-Din," he murmured, "even in death you have come to make peace with me." Then he read the whole notebook from beginning to end, noting the dates. His brother's journey to Balsora, his marriage, the birth of Bedreddin Hasan, comparing these with the years of his own marriage and his daughter's birth. He saw all matched perfectly. His heart swelled with wonder and joy. Without delay, he carried the notebook and receipt before the Sultan, who, hearing the tale, forgave all past displeasure and ordered that every detail be written in the royal chronicles for future generations. Yet one mystery tormented Semseddin. What had become of his vanished son-in-law? For 7 days, he sent searchers through every street of Cairo, but no trace was found. Such a marvel, he sighed, was never heard before. In his uncertainty, he resolved to record in writing the state of his house, describing the wedding, the bridal chamber, and every ornament and gift. The robe, the turban, and the purse he locked in a chest. Soon after, his daughter told him she was with child. 9 months later, she bore a handsome boy. A nurse and many attendants were hired for him, and his grandfather named him Ajib, which means the Wonderful One. When Ajib was 7 years old, Semseddin sent him to study with a renowned teacher, attended each day by 2 slaves who escorted him to and from the school. The boy played among children of good families, but being of higher station, he was spared correction when others were punished. This indulgence spoiled him. He grew proud and insolent, wishing always to command, never to obey. At last, his companions, weary of his tyranny, complained to the teacher. The man first urged them to be patient, but seeing that gentleness only made Ajib worse, he devised a plan. "My children," said the teacher, "tomorrow we shall humble this arrogant boy. When he comes to play, form a circle around him and say, 'We will play only on one condition, that each must tell his own name and the names of his father and mother. Whoever cannot do so shall be counted a foundling and may not join our game. He will be shamed and will come no more." The children rejoiced at the scheme. Next morning, as soon as Ajib arrived, they surrounded him and began the game. Each in turn spoke his name and parentage. Then came Ajib's turn. "My name is Agib," he declared proudly. "My mother is the Lady of Beauty, and my father is the Vizier Semseddin Mohammed." At this, the children cried out together, "Oh, Agib, what nonsense is this? That man is not your father. He is your grandfather." "May heaven punish you all," cried little Ajib, his face flushed with hurt and fury. "How dare you say that the Grand Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed is not my father?" The other boys burst into laughter. "He isn't. He's your grandfather," they taunted. "You have no father among men, and you cannot play with us any longer." And off they went together, laughing cruelly as they disappeared down the lane, leaving poor Agib standing alone. His heart swelled with shame. Tears welled up, and soon he was weeping bitterly. The schoolmaster, who had watched everything in silence, now came forward and said softly, "So you did not know, my child? The Grand Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed is not your father, but your mother's father, the father of the Lady of Beauty. None of us knows who your true father is. It is said that the king once forced your mother to wed his hunchbacked horsekeeper, but that she lay instead with a spirit from the unseen world, and you were born. You must not boast over your companions again, for pride becomes no one, least of all those whose lineage is veiled in mystery." The words struck Agib like cold rain. Shamed and trembling, he left the school and ran home, still crying. He went straight to his mother's chamber. Seeing him so distraught, the Lady of Beauty drew him close and asked gently what had happened. Yet the more she questioned, the harder he sobbed. At last, between tears, he whispered, "Mother, by the name of the Almighty, tell me truly, who is my father?" She answered tenderly, "Your father is the Grand Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed, who kisses you every day." But Agib shook his head. "That is not true, mother. He is your father, not mine. Who is my father?" Hearing this, the Lady of Beauty's face grew pale. Memories of her wedding, her long widowhood, and her lost husband flooded back. She began to weep, mourning her beloved Bedreddin Hasan, the man she had once called her own. While mother and child wept together, the Grand Vizier himself entered the room. Startled to see them in tears, he asked what sorrow had befallen them. The Lady of Beauty told him all that had happened, the cruel mockery at school and the bitter words that had followed. The Vizier's heart sank. So, after all these years, whispers still drifted through the city about his daughter and the strange birth of her son. The shame of it stung him deeply. That very day, he went before the king, bowed to the ground, and begged leave to journey eastward to Basora in search of his lost nephew, Bedreddin Hasan. He could bear no longer the rumor that his daughter had lain with a demon. The king, moved by pity, granted the vizier's request and even gave him a royal letter of introduction, urging the princes of distant lands to help him find his kinsman and, if found, to send the man safely back to Cairo. Tears of gratitude filled the vizier's eyes. He thanked the king and departed, praying for blessing on the road ahead. At home, he began at once to prepare for the long journey. After 4 days of bustle, all was ready. He set forth with his daughter, the Lady of Beauty, and his little grandson, Agib. For 19 days they traveled without rest. On the 20th, they came to a green meadow near the gates of Damascus, where a clear river wound its way through fields and gardens. There they pitched their tents, for the place was fair beyond telling. The vizier decided to rest 2 days before continuing east. In that time, he allowed his attendants to visit the city, some to see its famed beauty, others to trade goods from Cairo for the silks and treasures of Damascus. The Lady of Beauty, wishing her son to see the wonders of the city, entrusted him to her faithful eunuch, bidding him guard the boy with utmost care. Agib was dressed in splendid garments and set out with his guardian, who carried a great staff in his hand. As they walked the streets, people stopped and stared, for the boy was lovely beyond words. Women leaned from windows, men left their shops, and all marveled at his grace and bright eyes. Some even followed to gaze a little longer, praising the mother who had borne so handsome a son. By chance, their way led past a pastry shop where many people had gathered. The crowd pressed so thickly that the eunuch and the boy were forced to halt. The shop belonged to none other than bedridden Hasan, who had been taken years ago by a kindly baker and made heir to his trade. Now he was the master baker of Damascus, known throughout the city for the sweetness of his confections. When he looked up and saw the boy, his heart stirred strangely within him. Yes, Agib's beauty was radiant. Yet what moved him most was something deeper, the unspoken pull of blood. He stepped forward, eyes shining, and said gently, "Dear little master, why do I feel such fondness for you? Pray, come into my humble shop and taste what I have baked with my own hands. Let me look upon you a little longer, for your face brings joy to my heart." His voice trembled with tenderness. Agib felt drawn to him at once and turned to his guardian. "This man's face is kind," said the boy softly, "and his voice is gentle. I should like to taste his cakes." But the eunuch frowned. "A noble child like you must not eat street pastries. How could I permit such a thing?" Bedridden Hasan, hearing this, exclaimed, "Ah, my dear little prince, How could anyone trust your care to one so harsh? Friend, grant me this favor. Let the child enter my shop and taste a morsel. It will please him and do you no harm. Surely, though your skin is dark, your heart is pure silver. Come, I will tell you how even the blackest skin may shine like snow. The eunuch laughed and asked how that could be. Bedreddin smiled and recited a few playful verses in praise of black eunuchs, saying that they alone safeguarded the honor of kings. Delighted by such flattery, the man consented, and together they entered the bakery. Bedreddin, overjoyed, returned to his work. I am baking cream-filled pastries, he said. You must taste them. They are the best in Damascus. My dear mother once taught me the secret herself. Soon, he drew a golden tray from the oven, sprinkled it with sugar and pomegranate seeds, and set it before them. The boy and the eunuch tasted, and both declared it the finest pastry they had ever known. Meanwhile, Bedreddin Hasan could not take his eyes off Ajib. Something in the boy's face, a fleeting resemblance to the beloved wife he had lost so cruelly, stirred the baker's heart so deeply that tears welled and slipped down his cheeks. He meant to wait until the boy had finished eating to ask about his family and the purpose of their journey to Damascus. But before he could speak, the impatient eunuch tugged the child away toward the road, insisting they return to camp. Bedreddin would not simply stand by. He closed his shop at once and followed. Before they reached the city gate, he had already caught up. The eunuch turned, frowning at the man trailing them. This fellow is becoming most annoying. What do you want of us? He barked. My good friend, said Bedreddin gently, forgive me. I suddenly remembered an errand that takes me beyond the walls. But his calm words did not soothe the eunuch, who turned irritably to the boy. There, you see? This is your doing. I knew I'd regret letting you into that shop. I should have been wiser. Perhaps he truly has business outside the city, said Ajib quietly. The road belongs to everyone. They walked on, hand in hand, without looking back. Yet, as they neared the Vizier's tents, they glanced over their shoulders. And there he was, still following, step for step. Ajib's face paled, then flushed. His heart thudded uneasily. What if his grandfather discovered he had stopped for pastries? In panic, the boy stooped, seized a small stone, and flung it. The pebble struck Bedreddin square on the forehead, and blood streamed down his face. The eunuch, half turning, called over his shoulder, You have only yourself to blame, baker. You brought this upon you. Bedr-ed-Din returned to the city, pressing the corner of his apron to his wound. "I was foolish," he murmured to himself, "to abandon my shop and follow the child. He must have thought I meant him harm." Back home, he had the cut bound and comforted himself with the thought that there were many in the world who suffered worse misfortunes. So, Bedr-ed-Din remained at his pastry shop in Damascus, while his uncle, the Grand Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed, after 2 days' rest, continued his journey. He traveled from city to city, Aleppo, Mardin, Mosul, and beyond, until at last he reached Basora. His first act there was to seek audience with the king. When the king learned who stood before him, he received him warmly. "What brings you to my court, noble vizier?" he asked. "Sire," replied Scheherazade, bowing, "I come in search of my younger brother, Nur-ed-Din Ali, who once had the honor of serving your majesty." The king sighed. "Your brother has long been dead, and as for his son, the boy vanished scarcely 2 months after his father's death. Though I sent men to search, none ever found a trace. But the boy's mother, daughter of a minister, still lives." Scheherazade humbly asked leave to visit the widow and bring her home to Egypt, and the king graciously consented. That very day, the vizier went with his daughter and grandson to her house. Lady Nur-ed-Din had lived since her husband's death in the same fine mansion they once shared, a noble home with marble pillars and a spacious courtyard. Yet the vizier scarcely noticed its beauty. Grief pressed too heavily upon his heart. He kissed the threshold and the carved nameplate of his lost brother, then asked to be shown to his sister-in-law. Servants led him to a small domed chamber in the center of the courtyard, the place where she spent her days and nights in sorrow, believing it to be the tomb of her missing son. When the vizier entered, he found her frail and weary, her eyes hollow from tears. He greeted her kindly and begged her to set aside her mourning for a moment to hear him. Gently, he told her who he was and how he had journeyed from Cairo to Basora in search of her. Then he recounted everything: the strange happenings at his daughter's wedding, the discovery of a little notebook sewn into the bride's headdress, and the boy's name written within. At last, he presented to her the young Ajib and his mother, the beautiful lady known as Fair One. At first, the widow sat motionless, her heart numb. But as she listened, the truth dawned. Her beloved son still lived. She rose, trembling, and embraced her daughter-in-law and grandson. Tears streamed down her face once more, but now they were tears of joy. Holding the boy close, she whispered blessings over him, while he too clung to her with affection. "My dear sister," said the Vizier at last, "it is time to dry your tears and prepare for a new journey. The king of Basora himself has granted permission for you to return with us to Egypt. Perhaps, God willing, we shall yet find your son, my nephew. And if that day comes, the tale of our family will be worthy to live for generations." The widow gladly agreed and ordered her household to make ready. Meanwhile, the Vizier went once more to the king to take his leave. The king rewarded him richly and sent with him a precious gift for the king of Egypt. So the caravan set forth from Basora and made its way back toward Damascus. When they reached the city outskirts, the Vizier again pitched camp at the same spot as before, declaring they would rest 3 days, enough time to recover strength and to purchase rare and beautiful gifts for the Egyptian court. While the Vizier busied himself bargaining for fine silks, young Ajib said to the eunuch, "Let us go into the city once more. I want to see the places I missed last time, and perhaps learn what became of that poor pastry cook I wronged." The eunuch agreed, first seeking permission from the lady fair, and together they entered Damascus through the main gate, the one leading toward the royal palace and closest to their camp. They wandered the streets, and before long came again to the pastry shop. There stood Bedreddin, as before, intent upon his work. "Good day, sir," called Ajib. "Do you remember me?" Bedreddin looked up, and his heart leapt. The same sudden, mysterious tenderness overwhelmed him. For a moment, he could not speak. Then softly he said, "My little master, please come into my shop once more, you and your tutor. Taste my pastries again, and forgive me for troubling you before. I know not why, but something drew me after you, as though my heart were bound to yours." Ajib, puzzled by his words, replied, "You speak strangely, sir. I'll come in, but only if you promise not to follow us afterward. Keep your word, and I'll visit again tomorrow, while my grandfather is still busy buying gifts for the king of Egypt." "My lord," said Bedreddin, bowing, "I will do all that you command." So the boy and his guardian entered. The pastries were as fragrant and delicious as before. "Sit with us," said Ajib kindly. "Eat too." Bedreddin sat beside him, his eyes shining with love, and would have kissed the child. But Ajib drew back. "Stay still," he said gently. "Your affection is too strong. Speak with me, if you wish, but nothing more." And so, beneath the soft light of the afternoon, the baker and the boy shared their cakes and their words, neither yet knowing that fate, silent and patient, was weaving the threads of their story toward reunion. Bedreddin obeyed and began to sing, a gentle melody he had just improvised in praise of Agib. He did not touch a single bite of food, content only to serve his guests. When they had finished their pastries, he brought them water to wash their hands and a spotless white cloth to dry them. Then, taking out a porcelain jug, he mixed sweetened water, dropped in a handful of pure snow to cool it, and said with a smile, "Please, my young lord, drink. This is rose-infused water. You will not find a finer drink anywhere in the city." The boy drank eagerly, delighted by its fragrance. Baradin took back the jug and offered it to the eunuch, who drained it in a single gulp. Satisfied and full, Agib and his attendant thanked the kindly baker and hurried home, for the hour had grown late. When they reached the tents, they went straight to the quarters of the women. Agib's grandmother rejoiced at his return. Each time she saw him, memories of her lost son flooded back, and her kisses were always wet with tears. "Oh, my dear grandson," she whispered. "If only I could kiss your father, too, how complete my joy would be." At supper, Agib sat beside her. She asked him all about his little outing, and, thinking he must be hungry after being away so long, she gave him a slice of the cream-filled pastry she had baked herself. It was a fine cake, indeed. Everyone said her pastries were better than those from the best shop in town. She even offered some to the eunuch, but both of them had already eaten too many sweets at Baradin's shop. They could not swallow another bite. Agib barely touched his piece, pretending not to like it, and left the plate untouched. The eunuch, whose name was Sabin, did the same. The old lady noticed and exclaimed, "What is this, my dear boy? Do you turn up your nose at your grandmother's pastries? Let me tell you, no one in the world makes cream-filled cakes like I do, except your father, Baradin, to whom I taught the secret." "Oh, grandmother," said Agib innocently, "you don't know. There's a baker in the city who makes pastries far better than yours. We just ate some this afternoon, and they were truly more delicious." At these words, the widow's eyes flashed toward the eunuch. "So, Sabin, I trusted you to care for my grandson, and you take him into the streets to feast like a beggar child?" "Madam," stammered Sabin, "it is true we entered the bakery and spoke a few words with the owner, but we ate nothing." "Forgive me," interrupted Agib quickly. "We did eat there, grandmother, pastries stuffed with cream, and they were wonderful." The old lady, furious, rose from the table and stormed off to her husband, the Vizier Scheherazade Mohammed. She told the whole story, adding perhaps a little more than the truth about Sabin's deceit. The Vizier, a man of fiery temper, flew into a rage. He went straight to the women's tent and shouted, "Wretched slave! How dare you betray my trust?" Seban still insisted he had eaten nothing, but young Agib stood firm. "Grandfather, I promise you, we did eat. We ate so much, we cannot even think of supper now. After the pastries, the baker gave me sweet rose water from a beautiful porcelain jug." The vizier turned to Seban. "Well, even now you dare to deny it?" Having gone too far to retreat, the eunuch swore again he had not eaten. "You lie," thundered the vizier. "I believe my grandson before I believe you. Yet, if you can eat one of those cakes now, I'll think you speak the truth." Poor Seban, already stuffed to the throat, tried to obey. He took a cake, bit into it, but had to spit it out, gagging. He muttered an excuse that he had overeaten the night before and was still too full. The vizier, angered by the stubborn lie, ordered him face down on the ground and commanded that he be flogged. Under the blows, Seban cried out, "Yes, yes, it's true. We went to a pastry shop, and the cakes there were 100 times better than these." The old widow, thinking Seban only said that out of spite, blaming her for his punishment, replied sharply, "I cannot believe any baker's cake could surpass mine. We shall see about that. You know the shop. Go there at once and buy one of those cream pastries, and we will judge for ourselves." She gave him money and sent him off immediately. At the shop, Seban said to the baker, "My good sir, here's the money. 1 cream pastry, please. A lady from our camp wishes to taste it." A fresh batch had just come from the oven. Bereddin chose the finest one and handed it to him. "Take this, friend," he said kindly. "I promise it is excellent, the best you will ever find. No one can make one finer than this, save my mother, if she still lives." Seban hurried back and gave the pastry to the widow, Nureddin Ali's mother. She took it eagerly, broke off a piece, and the moment she tasted it, she cried out and fainted dead away. The vizier, who was there at the time, was astonished. He called for water to revive her. When she came to, she exclaimed through tears, "Praise be to God, this pastry, it could have been made by no one but my beloved son, Bereddin Hasan." At her words, the vizier's heart leapt for joy, though caution soon tempered it. "But, my dear lady," he said gently, "how can you be sure? Could it not be that another baker has learned to bake as skillfully as your son?" She shook her head. "Perhaps others bake better than I, but this flavor, this secret touch, only my son knows. There is a taste in his cakes that no one else on earth could ever imitate." She clapped her hands and went on with lively excitement. "Please, eldest brother, do not keep it to yourselves. Rejoice. At last we have found what we have long wished for." "Calm yourself," the Vizier replied gently. "We shall know the truth before long. For now, simply fetch the pastry baker who made that cake. I am certain you and my daughter will recognize him at once, if he is really Bedreddin Hasan. Both of you must hide where you can see him plainly, but where he cannot see you. I would not have the people of Damascene know our household is here. Let us hold our peace until we reach Cairo. I promise you a most delightful surprise." Having said this, he returned to his tent, summoned 50 servants, and gave them strict orders. "Each of you take a club and follow Sabin. He will lead you to a sweet shop in the city. When you arrive, wreck everything inside. If the shopkeeper asks why, ask him if he was the one who made the cake that was recently bought and carried away. If he answers yes, seize him, bind him, and bring him here. Do not beat or injure him. Now go, waste no time." The Vizier's command was carried out with swift resolve. The band of servants, led by the eunuch, burst into Bedreddin Hasan's pastry shop and set to smashing. Pots and pans flew, jams and pastries were scattered in every direction. Bedreddin Hasan stood aghast. "My good sirs," he cried, "why do you treat me so? What have I done wrong? What crime have I committed? Did you make the cream-filled cake that was sold to this gentleman?" they demanded. "Yes, I baked it myself." "And what of it? I challenge anyone to make a finer cake than mine." But the Vizier's men paid no heed to his words. They kept up the destruction until the very oven was shattered. The clamor drew the neighborhood, and people came running to see why 50 club-bearing men were causing such uproar. Again, they pressed Bedreddin with questions. "Please, tell us what crime we have done to deserve this ruin," he begged. "Did you make the cake sold to the Vizier's household?" Yes, I did. My cakes are of fine quality. I deserve no such treatment." Unmoved, the servants seized him. They tore the cloth from his head, bound his hands behind him, and dragged him, stumbling, from his shop. The bystanders, pitying Bedreddin, were ready to defend him. But at that moment, officers sent by the governor arrived and forced the crowd back so the Vizier's men could take Bedreddin away. The Vizier had already informed the governor of his plan and asked for aid. This governor ruled Syria in the King of Egypt's name. He would not disobey a request from the Vizier of the sovereign. So although Bedreddin cried out and asked what had been found inside the cake, nobody answered. At last, they reached the camp, but all had to wait for the Vizier's return from seeing the governor. No sooner had the Vizier, Semseddin Mohammed, come back than he demanded of the servants, "Bring the pastry baker here." They presented Bereddin Hasan to him. The young man wept and implored, his tears falling fast. "Sir," he cried, "what offense have I committed against you? Tell me, I beg you." "You there," the Vizier said fiercely. "Did you make the cake that was taken to my household?" "I confess it was I who made it. What wrong is in that?" "You deserve punishment worthy of your crime. How dare you make such a vile cake for me?" "Oh heavens!" Bereddin exclaimed, looking so foolishly distressed that even the Vizier could barely keep a stern face. "Must I die for making a poor cake? Has any man ever been put to death over a tasteless pastry?" "Yes, your crime is worthy of death," the Vizier answered. "Do not expect clemency." While they argued, the two women who hid within the house watched closely. Time had passed since they had last seen him, but it was not hard to recognize the baker. Joy overtook them so suddenly they fainted. When they regained consciousness, they longed to rush out and embrace Bereddin. But remembering the Vizier's command that they must not show themselves, they stifled their maternal and wifely instincts and held back. That very night, the Vizier resolved to set off at once. The camp was broken, and the wagons made ready. He had Bereddin shut in a box, the lid fastened, and loaded upon a camel. The company rode through the night and all the following day without rest, stopping only at dusk. Bereddin was taken from the box and given food. For 20 days of the journey, he was treated thus, bound and hidden away. When they reached Cairo, the Vizier made camp beyond the city and had Bereddin brought before him. He then summoned a carpenter and in front of Bereddin ordered, "Quickly make me a gallows." "What do you intend to do with them, sir?" Bereddin asked. "To hang you upon it and parade you through the streets, that all may see a baker so shameless as to make a cake without pepper." "Oh, the heavens!" Bereddin cried in a voice so comically distressed that even the Emperor Harun al-Rashid, a man always so solemn, could not help smiling when the Grand Vizier Jafar related this tale later. "Am I to die a shameful, painful death for leaving out pepper in a cake? How can this be?" he moaned again. "Why was my house wrecked? Why was I put in a chest? Why are they going to hang me? All because I neglected to put pepper in a cake. O Lord, hast thou ever heard of such a thing? Is this the conduct of Matin of Islam?" He wept and lamented in the most pitiful manner. When the carpenter brought the gallows, his lamentations grew louder still. "Oh heavens," he howled, "why must I die so shamefully and painfully? What crime have I committed? I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not renounced my faith. My only fault is that I did not put pepper in the sweet." Night had fallen. Semseddin Mohammed ordered Bereddin put back into the box and said, "Remain there until morning. I shall not hurry your death before dawn." The box was loaded again upon a camel already bearing goods from Damascus. Merchandise was piled upon the beasts, and the vizier rode at the head of the company, yet had the camel carrying the chest go before him. They passed through streets that were still quiet with sleep, and reached the vizier's mansion. He set the box down, but forbade anyone to open it until he gave the word. While the servants were unloading the camels, the vizier summoned Bereddin's mother and the young woman, his own daughter, and told the girl, "Praise be to God for restoring to us the joy of finding your husband. You remember how your bridal chamber was adorned on your wedding night. Arrange it now, exactly as it was that night. If you cannot recall every detail, consult the notes your father has kept in his book. I must attend to other matters." The fair young lady carried out her father's orders with gladness. She set everything just as it had been when Bereddin Hasan had first come here, following behind the hump-backed groom. The nuptial throne was placed upon the dais, and candles were lit until the room glowed. When all was ready, the vizier entered and laid Bereddin's coat, his headcloth, and his purse upon a chair. Then he said to his daughter, "Now you shall climb into bed and pull off your garments. When Bereddin comes, complain that he stays away so long that when you wake, you do not know where he is. Urge him to return to sleep." When the old man had finished speaking, he quietly left the chamber, wishing to give his daughter peace of mind. He commanded all the servants to withdraw, leaving only a few attendants behind. Then he ordered that the chest containing Bedreddin Hasan be opened. The young man was dressed in a simple tunic and drawers, carefully so as not to wake him, and carried back to the bridal room, laid upon the bed in such a way that he would awaken soon, yet still half lost between dream and waking. Bedreddin stirred, his eyes opening to the pale light. He rose and wandered about the room. Every piece of furniture, every embroidered cushion, every flicker of candlelight reminded him of the evening of his wedding. Astonishment grew within him. This was indeed the very same chamber where he had met the hunchbacked groom. And when he turned his gaze toward the adjoining room, its door left invitingly open, he saw his own robe and turban lying exactly where he had set them that night. "Heavens!" he cried, rubbing his eyes. "Am I dreaming or awake?" At that very moment, the lovely lady, who had been watching with quiet delight, drew aside the silken veil of the bed and spoke softly, her voice as gentle as a breeze at dawn. "My dear husband, why do you stand there by the door? Come back to bed. You have been gone so long. When I awoke and found you missing, I was bewildered and could do nothing but wait for you to return." Bedreddin Hasan froze, struck by wonder. For the beautiful woman speaking to him was the very same with whom he remembered lying on that fateful wedding night. He stepped toward her, though his thoughts swirled like mist after rain. So many strange things had befallen him during those 10 long years that he dared not yet trust his senses. Instead of lying beside her, he went to the chair where his robe and turban rested. Studying them carefully, he murmured, "Good heavens, I cannot make sense of this." Seeing his confusion, the lady smiled sweetly. "Come now, my love, will you not lie down? What troubles you so?" He turned to her and asked, "My lady, please tell me, how long have I been here beside you?" She laughed lightly. "Why, what a question! Did you not just leave the bed and walk out only a moment ago? Truly, you are forgetful tonight." "My lady," said Bedreddin, "I remember lying beside you, yes? But I also remember living almost 10 years in Damascus. If I lay with you this very night, how could I have spent so many years away? One of these memories must be false. Tell me, I beg you, was my wedding but a dream? Or was it my life in Damascus?" "Ah, indeed," said the lady, pretending to ponder. "You must have dreamed of living in Damascus. Then that is the strangest dream of all," Bedreddin exclaimed with a laugh. "You shall find it amusing, I think. Imagine, I saw myself lying at the gate of Damascus, dressed only in my tunic and drawers, just as I am now. Crowds mocked me as I walked through the streets. Then I took refuge in the house of a kind pastry maker who adopted me as his son, taught me his craft, and left me all his fortune when he died. I kept his shop, sold sweets to the townsfolk, and in the end, I was nearly hanged. Oh, how fortunate that I awoke before the rope tightened round my neck." The lady feigned surprise. "Hanged? But for what dreadful crime could they punish you so cruelly?" "For none, my lady, none at all," he said, half laughing, half bewildered. "Only because I sold a sweet pastry without putting pepper in it." At that, the lady burst into laughter, bright and musical. "Surely they were unjust to you then, my poor husband." "Oh, it did not end there," Bedreddin continued. "Because of that wretched pastry, they smashed my shop to pieces, bound my arms, and locked me in a narrow chest so tight that even now my limbs ache at the memory. Then carpenters came to build a gallows for me. But praise be to heaven, it was only a dream. That night, sleep would not visit him again. Again and again, he asked himself whether he was truly awake or still wandering within a dream. He gazed about the chamber, whispering, "No, I cannot be mistaken. This is the very room I entered with the groom, the room where I lay beside the woman meant for him." At dawn, there came a gentle knock. The Grand Vizier, Scheherazade, Mohammed, entered, greeting him with warmth. Bedreddin's eyes widened in astonishment, for before him stood the very man who had once condemned him to death. "It is you," he cried. "You who sentenced me to the gallows, all for a cream pastry lacking pepper." The Vizier laughed heartily and, to calm him, began to recount the whole truth. How, by divine guidance, Bedreddin had wed his daughter in place of the hunchback. How a notebook written by Nureddin Ali had revealed that Bedreddin was his own kinsman. How he had left Cairo in search of him, and all that had followed. At last, he embraced the young man tenderly and said, "My dear nephew, forgive the sorrows I caused you since the day I found you. I wished to bring you home before revealing the joy that awaited you, so that you might understand. The deeper the suffering, the greater the happiness that follows. Now let go of all pain. Rejoice, for you shall soon see those who love you most. While you dress, I shall go and tell your mother the good news. She longs to hold you in her arms once more. I shall also bring your son, the child you met in Damascus and loved without even knowing he was your own." There are no words to describe the joy that filled Bedreddin Hasan's heart when he was reunited with his mother and son. The three clung to each other as though they would never part again. His mother spoke of the sorrow that had weighed upon her through the long years of his absence, and little Ajib, who once had pushed his father away, now clung to him with delight, begging for his embrace. As for Bedreddin, his gratitude and love overflowed beyond all telling. During that time, the Grand Vizier Shamseddin Mohammed came before the king of Egypt to report the success of his journey. The king, utterly captivated by the strange and wondrous tale, ordered that it be recorded and preserved in the royal archives for generations to come. When the vizier returned home, he held a grand feast, and the whole family rejoiced together until the sun sank behind the horizon. When Jafar, the vizier of Caliph Harun al-Rashid, finished telling the story, he bowed deeply and said, "Commander of the Faithful, this is the full tale of Bedreddin Hasan." The Caliph finding the story both curious and delightful, forgave the slave Raban his sentence of death. As for the young man himself, to comfort him for the loss of his dearly beloved wife, the caliph granted him the hand of a maiden from the royal palace, and bestowed upon him many generous gifts besides. But Scheherazade, seeing the first light of dawn glimmer through the lattice, spoke gently, "Majesty, though the story I have told may please you, it cannot compare to the one I have prepared for the coming night. If you will grant me life until then, I believe that tale will delight your majesty even more." King Shahryar rose from his couch, uncertain what to do. This maiden, he thought, tells stories so enchanting that once she begins, there is no turning away until the end. Perhaps I should have her executed today. Yet, why rush? It may be that tonight's story will surpass them all. Let her live another day. I can always command her death once the tale is done. And so, when the next night arrived, Dinarzade, the faithful sister, woke Scheherazade before the dawn. With the king's permission, the storyteller's voice once again filled the quiet chamber, and she began her next tale. The story of King Badr Basim of the Isles and his Vizier continued. When Prince Saif el-Muluk had finished telling the story of his life, he turned to King Damath and said gently, "My lord, that is all you wished to know. Now, I ask you to judge. Am I truly a man of perfect happiness? For even now, I remain hopelessly enchanted by Princess Bedi al-Jaman. More than ever before, I find myself in love with her. I often scold my own heart for its folly. How strange to love a woman who no longer walks this earth. And yet, no matter how I reason, her image will not fade. She reigns eternally within my heart." King Bereddin listened, unable to comprehend such a love. "Tell me," he asked at last, "do you still keep her portrait with you?" "I do, Your Majesty," the prince replied softly. "I never part from it." With that, he reached into the folds of his robe and brought forth a small painting, its colors faint with age. The king gazed upon it and marveled. The daughter of King Sabin was indeed a rare beauty, he said. "Now I understand why the great Solomon once cherished her so dearly. And yet, your devotion, Prince, is beyond all measure." Then the Vizier of Sorrows spoke, his voice low and grave. "Your Majesty, from the tale of Prince Saif el-Muluk, one truth is clear. Every soul bears its own grief. None among us is born to taste perfect joy." But the king shook his head and smiled faintly. "I cannot accept that," he said. I choose to look upon the world with brighter eyes. Somewhere, I believe, there are still those whose days are untouched by sorrow. The 109th night. King Damet was seized by a strange longing to know whether there truly existed anywhere under heaven a person who was completely happy. So he summoned his noble kinsman, Prince Sepin Muluk, and said, "Go and walk through the streets of my city. Pass by the workshops of the craftsmen. Watch them closely. And if you find one who seems most joyful of all, bring him here to me." Prince Sepin Muluk bowed and obeyed. Hours later, he returned to the palace of King Beradin Lolo. The king asked, "Well then, have you done as I commanded?" "Yes, Your Majesty," said the prince. "I wandered through many streets and saw countless artisans at their work. Many sang while they labored, and all appeared content with their lot. Yet one man caught my eye, a young weaver named Malik, who laughed and joked with his companions so heartily that his joy seemed boundless. I spoke to him. 'You look very merry, friend.' And he answered, 'I have always been this way. Sorrow has no place in my thoughts.' I asked his neighbors whether this was truly his nature, and they assured me that he laughed from dawn till dusk. So I told the youth to follow me, and he now waits outside the throne room. Shall I bring him before you, sire?" "Bring him in," said the king. "I wish to speak with him myself." Moments later, Prince Sepin Muluk returned with the young weaver, whose face shone with bright intelligence. Malik bowed low before the throne. "Rise, Malik," said the king kindly. "Tell me honestly, are you truly satisfied with your life? They say you spend your days weaving and singing, smiling without care. Are you, in truth, the happiest of all my subjects? Speak plainly, for this is a matter close to my heart. Hide nothing from me." The weaver straightened and replied, "May your majesty live 1,000 years, and may joy ever fill your days. But I beg permission to decline the task you lay upon me. I know well that it is forbidden to deceive one's sovereign. Yet there are truths a man scarcely dares to reveal. Let me confess this much. People are mistaken about me. Though I laugh and sing each day, perhaps I am the most wretched man alive. I entreat your majesty to accept that confession, and not compel me to tell what sorrows lie beneath it." The king leaned forward. "Why do you fear to speak of your life? Are your deeds dishonorable?" The weaver shook his head. "No, sire. My story could bring honor even to the mightiest prince, yet I have vowed never to speak of it to any living soul." "Malik," said the king, his eyes glinting with curiosity, "your words stir my heart all the more. I command you, tell me everything." And so, bound by the royal command, the young weaver bowed once more and began to tell the strange, hidden story of his life. The story of Prince Malik and Princess Thirin. I was the only son of a wealthy merchant in the great city of Surat. Yet not long after my father's passing, I squandered nearly all the vast fortune he had left behind. What little remained, I wasted away in the company of my companions, until, one evening, a foreign traveler came to Surat on his way to the distant Isle of Serendib, and happened to join a banquet I was hosting. That night, the talk turned to journeys and adventure. Some spoke with glowing words about the wonders of travel, the joy of seeing distant lands, the wisdom one gains upon the road. Others, however, warned of the countless perils that lurk beyond familiar walls. Storms at sea, treacherous paths, strange beasts, and cruel men. Their words filled my mind with both yearning and fear. The lure of discovery tugged at my heart, but the dangers they described made me hesitate. When the talk fell silent, I spoke. Listening to tales of distant pleasures, one longs to set forth at once. Yet when we picture the hardships awaiting the traveler, our courage falters, and we stay at home. If only one could roam from one end of the world to the other, without sorrow or peril. Why, I would leave this very city of Surat at sunrise. The guests burst into cheerful laughter. Only the foreigner smiled quietly and said, "Sir, if you truly wish to travel, but shrink from danger, I can show you a way to journey wherever you please, without fear, without hardship." I thought he jested, but after the feast, he beckoned me aside and said softly, "Tomorrow morning, I shall come to your house and show you something quite remarkable." And true to his word, the next day he appeared at my door. "I mean to keep my promise," he said, "but we must make ready. In a few days' time, you shall see the fruit of what I told you. Today, we begin. Send a servant to find a skilled carpenter and have them bring some planks of wood already cut." I did as he asked, little knowing that this strange request would mark the beginning of the most wondrous and perilous journey of my life. The 110th night. When the carpenter and my servants returned with the wooden planks, the stranger asked him to build a chest 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. While the carpenter set to work, the foreign guest was no less busy, fashioning curious little parts for the device, screws and springs, delicate and precise. The two of them worked all that day, And when evening came, the task was nearly done. I sent the carpenter home, and the next morning, the stranger continued alone, carefully fitting the screws and assembling the strange contraption. On the third day, the work was complete. We spread a fine Persian carpet over the wooden chest and carried it to my country estate. The stranger and I followed together. When we arrived, he turned to me and said softly, "Send your servants home, my lord. Let only the two of us remain. I wish no eyes but ours to witness what comes next." So I dismissed them, and when we were alone, I waited, curious and expectant. Then, before I could ask a question, the stranger stepped inside the chest, and to my astonishment, it rose from the ground. It floated upward, cutting through the air with incredible speed, until it vanished from sight. A moment later, it returned and landed gently before me. I stood frozen in wonder. The foreigner stepped out smiling. "You see, my lord, it moves lightly as a feather. Now you may believe that with this device, no bandit will ever trouble your journeys. This is my gift to you, a carriage of the air, to bear you safely wherever you wish to go. There is no sorcery in it, no spell or charm, only the laws of motion. I am a master of mechanics, and this is but one of many marvels I can craft." I thanked him deeply for such a precious gift and offered him a purse filled with golden sequins. "Tell me, kind sir," I said, "how is it made to move?" "You shall see," he replied. He invited me to step inside the chest with him, touched a spring, and once again, it soared upward. Then he showed me how to command it. "Turn this screw, and it will drift to the right. That one, and it veers left. Touch this spring to rise, and that one to descend." I tried it myself. It was marvelously simple. I could glide higher, lower, faster, slower, just as I pleased. After circling the skies, we returned and landed softly in my garden. The Persian carpet had been removed, leaving small air holes along the sides, through which I could see the world outside. We arrived before my servants did, much to their amazement. I ordered the chest carried into my private chamber and guarded it as though it were a treasure beyond price. The stranger departed, both of us satisfied. For a time, I continued to squander my father's fortune in idle pleasures. But gold flows like water, and soon I found myself in debt. When word spread through Surat that I was ruined, no man would lend to me again. My creditors grew relentless, demanding payment I could no longer give. Faced with shame and despair, I thought of the flying chest. One night, I dragged it into the garden, placed a few provisions and the last of my money inside, and stepped within. Touching the spring, I felt it lift, higher, higher, until the city of Surat and all my troubles were far below. Through the night, I flew as fast as the wind. When dawn came, I peered through one of the holes. Below stretched mountains and valleys, barren plains and fearful deserts, with no sign of a dwelling anywhere. I flew on through that day and the following night. At sunrise, I saw a great forest beneath me, and beyond it, a splendid city beside a vast green field. I brought the chest down to hover above the trees, gazing upon the city and a shining palace at the far edge of the plain. Longing to know where I had come, I landed among the woods and hid my marvelous vessel there. Then I went out on foot until I met a farmer at work in the field. "Good sir," I asked, "what is the name of this city?" He looked up and said, "Young man, I see you are a stranger indeed, for this is Ghazna. Our king is Bahman, a just and valiant ruler. And that grand palace yonder, who lives there?" I asked. "That," he said, lowering his voice, "is the palace where King Bahman keeps his daughter, the Princess Thirin. Her stars foretold that she would be deceived by a man's love. To prevent this disgrace, the king built that fortress of marble, surrounded by deep water. The locks are of the finest steel from China, and the king himself guards the keys. 100 soldiers patrol the grounds day and night, and no man is permitted to come near. Once a week, the king visits his daughter and then returns to his court in Ghazna. Only her nurse and a few maidservants live with her there." And as the farmer spoke, I looked toward that distant marble tower gleaming under the sun, and my heart began to quicken with a strange and fateful curiosity. The 111th night. I thanked the farmer for his words and turned my steps toward the city. No sooner had I entered its gates than I heard the thunder of galloping hooves. Moments later, a splendid procession appeared. Noble riders upon richly adorned horses, armor gleaming in the sun. At their center rode a tall and stately figure, crowned with gold, his robe of royal yellow shimmering with 1,000 diamonds. I guessed at once that this must be the king of Ghazna himself, come to visit his daughter. My guess proved true, as the townsfolk confirmed when I inquired. After wandering through the city for some time, satisfying my curiosity, my thoughts returned to the chest. Though I had hidden it well, I could not shake a sense of unease. I hurried back into the forest, and only when I saw the wooden chest still untouched did I finally breathe with ease. Relieved, I ate my provisions contentedly and decided to spend the night beneath the trees. I hoped for peaceful sleep, now that no debt collectors haunted my mind. But rest would not come. The farmer's tale echoed in my head. Strange, I thought, that King Bahman should trouble himself with such superstition. Was it truly necessary to build an entire palace merely to confine his daughter? Is a royal palace not secure enough? And if her astrologers saw in the heavens that her fate was bound to another's, how could he hope to prevent it? Man may guard against many things, yet never against destiny. If Princess Thirin's heart is destined to love, no wall will keep her from it. My thoughts circled around her name. Princess Thirin. Surely she must be of incomparable beauty, fairer than any woman I had met in Surat or Goa, those charming ladies who had once helped me spend my fortune so easily. I said to myself, I must find a way into that palace, into her chamber itself. Who knows? Perhaps I am the very man the stars have foretold. In those days, I was young, reckless, and not easily daunted. Once resolved, I acted at once. I climbed into my enchanted chest and guided it toward the royal palace. Fortune favored me, for the night was dark and moonless. I flew silently over the guards who kept watch around the moat, and none saw me. I landed upon the roof, near a window from which soft light spilled. Crawling closer, I peered inside, and there lay a chamber of magnificent splendor. Upon a silken bed slept Princess Thirin, her beauty outshining even the rumors. I stood entranced. Drawn by wonder, I knelt beside her and gently lifted one of her hands to my lips. At my touch, she awoke. Seeing a stranger kneeling there, she cried out in terror. Her old nurse, sleeping in the next room, rushed in at once. Mat Peke, save me. There is a man in my room. How did he get here? Did you let him in? Me? The nurse exclaimed, deeply offended. How could your highness think such a thing of me? Even if I wished to, how could anyone pass the guards outside? You know the palace, 20 iron gates, each sealed with the king's own signet. Only His Majesty holds the keys. I cannot imagine how this young man came here. While they spoke, I racked my brain for what to say. Then a daring thought came to me, to convince them that I was none other than the Prophet Muhammad himself. So I spoke solemnly. Princess Thirin, and you, Mat Peke, do not be alarmed at my presence. I am not one of those men who seek favor through gold or deceit. I have no intention of dishonoring the princess. Never has an unholy thought crossed my mind. I am the Prophet Muhammad. I could not stand idly by while your father, King Bahman, imprisoned his daughter out of fear of fate, robbing her of youth and joy. Fear not, princess, for peace and glory await you. You shall be the bride of the Prophet Muhammad. When word of our union spreads across the world, every king will honor your father as the Prophet's own father-in-law, and every princess on earth will envy the blessed fate of Princess Thirin. The 112th night, Princess Thirin and her old governess exchanged a glance of uncertainty, as though each waited for the other to decide what to make of the words I had just spoken. As for me, I confess I doubted whether my words had stirred their hearts at all. Yet women, as the old saying goes, are ever willing to believe in marvels. And so it happened. Both the governess and the princess took my words for truth. They believed I was none other than the Prophet Muhammad himself. That night, I took cruel advantage of the princess's innocent faith. When the long hours of the night had almost passed, I rose from her side before dawn broke. I left the palace quietly, promising that I would return the next evening. Swiftly, I went to where my enchanted chest lay hidden. I climbed inside, and with a breath of secret wind, it lifted me high into the air, far beyond the eyes of the watchman. Descending into a forest, I hid the chest among the trees and made my way into the city. There, I bought enough food for 8 days, fine garments, a silken headcloth from India streaked with golden threads, and the richest perfumes to anoint my hair and body. I spent the last of my coins without care for the morrow, for after such an adventure, what was left in the world to fear or desire? All that day, I stayed in the forest, grooming myself and bathing in fragrance. When night returned, I crept once more into the chest and let it carry me to the roof of Princess Thirin's palace. As before, I entered her chamber unseen. She was waiting for me, her eyes bright with longing. "My holy prophet," she whispered. "I began to fear you had forgotten your new bride." "Sweet princess," said I, "how could such a thought cross your heart? Have I not sworn to love you forever? But tell me, my lord," she asked shyly, "how is it that you look so young? I had always imagined the Prophet Muhammad as a venerable old man." "You are right, dearest," I answered smoothly. "That is how I am most often seen. Yet, had I come to you in my usual form, an old man with silver beard and shining brow, I fear you might not have welcomed me as you did. So I chose instead a shape more pleasing to your eyes." At this, the governess joined in, praising me as the handsomest of men, and saying that any maiden would count herself blessed to find such a husband. Before dawn, I slipped away again, careful not to be seen. The next night, I returned once more, and again, my deceit went unnoticed. The princess grew fonder of me with every visit. She trusted my every word, for when hearts are bound by desire, doubt seldom finds its way in. Some days later, the king of Ghazna came to visit his daughter, accompanied by his lords and soldiers. Finding the palace seals unbroken, he said to his ministers, "All is well. The doors remain locked and sealed with my signet. My daughter is safe." The king ascended alone to the princess's chambers. Seeing him, she blushed and trembled. He questioned her, and his words only deepened her confusion. At last, unable to hide the truth, she confessed all that had happened. The king was struck with astonishment. "O Majesty," continued the weaver in his tale to King Baradin of Damascus, "imagine the wonder of that monarch, who learned he had become father-in-law to the Prophet Muhammad without ever knowing it." The king cried out, "By heaven, how could you be so foolish, my daughter? All my watchfulness was in vain. No lock or seal can guard a heart. Surely some rogue has deceived you." Angered, he left her chamber and searched the palace from roof to cellar, but nowhere could he find the impudent intruder, and his amazement only grew. "How did that villain enter?" he muttered. "By what magic did he come and go unseen?" Calling his nobles, he demanded counsel. "What troubles your majesty?" asked the vizier. "You seem shaken." The king told them all that had transpired and asked their judgment. The vizier spoke first. "Though it sounds strange, Majesty, it may be true. Many royal lines claim descent from the gods. If the princess has indeed been visited by the prophet, we may take it as divine favor." The other ministers, out of fear or flattery, nodded in agreement. Only one dared dissent. "My lord," he said, "it is folly to believe such tales. Why would the prophet, surrounded by angels in paradise, descend to earth to seek a bride? This smells of trickery. If your majesty will heed me, you shall uncover the knave who dared to wear a holy name to beguile the princess." Though King Bahman was credulous by nature, he respected his vizier's wisdom. Still, he could not be sure. He resolved to test the truth for himself, speaking with the so-called prophet alone. Thus, he ordered the court and all attendants back to the capital. "Go, all of you," he said. "I shall remain here with my daughter. At dawn, you will return." When they had gone, the king questioned the princess closely. "Did this prophet eat or drink with you?" "No, father," she said. I offered him meats and sweet wines, but he refused them all. Since he came, I have never seen him taste a morsel. Tell me everything again, commanded the king, and forget not the smallest detail. The princess obeyed, and the king listened intently, weighing every word, pondering the strange tale that had brought such shame and mystery into his house. The 113th night. Night fell. King Bahman sat upon his low couch, had candles set alight, and ordered a marble table to be brought in. He drew his sword and laid it there, ready to wash away the royal honor with blood should anyone dare to stain it. He waited with great impatience, and in the strain of that waiting, his heart could not help but falter from time to time. That very night, as chance would have it, a tempest rose. Thunder roared and lightning flashed across the sky. The king went to the window and looked out. The heavens seemed all ablaze, as if fires burned everywhere. Though all remained as before, the sight troubled him. He took it for an omen. Might this storm herald the descent of the great prophet? Could those frantic flashes be meant to light his way? While the king sat with these thoughts, I, quite unwittingly, stepped to the window. At the sight of me, the king's anger melted away, replaced by reverence and fear. The sword fell from his hand. He sank to his knees, kissed my feet, and cried aloud, "Great prophet, who is this mortal before me? What have his deeds been, that he may have the honor to be your father-in-law?" At these words, I understood that the king and the princess had been conversing with one another. It appeared that deceiving this ruler of Ghazna was no harder than deceiving his beloved daughter. I felt glad. It meant I was not confronted by a man of such firmness as would pose questions the prophet could not answer. I decided at once to take advantage of the king's weak nature. I helped him to his feet and said, "O king, you are the most devoted among rulers to my faith. Your piety pleases me. I entreated the Most High to lift from the princess the ill fate that was set upon her, the unhappy thing written in her stars. And the Most High consented, provided that Princess Thirin become one of my wives. I consented to wed her, to reward you for your daily virtues." King Bahman was utterly taken in. He believed every word I spoke. Pleased by this betrothal, he once more fell at my feet to express his deepest thanks. I raised the king, embraced him, and pledged to shelter him always. The king could find no grander words to thank me. Perhaps thinking it best I should remain alone with the princess, he retired to another chamber. I sat with the princess for a while, but kept watch and would not let sleep overtake me. lest morning find the wooden chest upon the palace roof seen by some eye. Therefore, before dawn, I slipped from her chamber and returned to my forest. At dawn, the ministers and courtiers came to the princess's palace to inquire whether the king had cleared up the matter. King Bahman replied, "Yes, now I know for certain. I have seen the great prophet in person. I have spoken with him. He is my daughter's husband. Nothing is truer than that." Hearing this, all turned to the minister who yesterday had expressed doubt and scolded him for his unbelief. Yet he steadfastly held to his suspicion. No matter what the king said, he could not be persuaded that Muhammad truly was Princess Thirin's husband. The king was near to fury with his minister, and the doubting man became the jest of the whole court. Another event that very day made the courtiers ever more firm in their belief. On the road back to the capital, the royal retinue was suddenly caught by a storm on the plain. Lightning streaked, and thunder crashed, as if the world itself were ending. By chance, the horse of the skeptical minister was struck by a flash that smote its eye. It reared and threw him to the ground, breaking a leg. All took it for heaven's chastisement upon him. The king said, "Wretch, this is the fruit of your lack of faith. You would not heed me, and now the prophet has punished you." The minister was taken home to be tended, and as soon as he reached the city, King Bahman issued a decree summoning the whole realm to prepare a great feast to celebrate Princess Thirin's marriage to the great prophet Muhammad. That day, I wandered through the city as I always did, hearing the people gossip of the princess's wedding and of the minister struck down by the prophet on the way home. How gullible and superstitious these folk were, I thought. Feasting and revelry broke out everywhere. Wherever one went, men shouted, "Long live King Bahman, the father-in-law of the great prophet." At dusk, I returned to the wood, and before long, I found myself once more within the princess's castle. Upon my arrival, I said to her, "Fair princess, you may not know what happened upon the plain this morning. A courtier, the same who doubted that you should be married to the great prophet Muhammad, was caught by a thunderstorm, fell from his horse, and broke a limb. I will not punish him more harshly. Yet I swear by my tomb in the city of Medina, from this day forth, if anyone dares to doubt your happiness, I will put that person to death." After a few hours' company with the princess, I returned to the forest. The next day, King Bahman gathered all his ministers and pronounced, "Today, we all come to beg forgiveness on behalf of the minister who broke his leg through his lack of faith in the great prophet Muhammad." So saying, the king mounted his horse and all the courtiers followed. He himself unlocked the palace gates, and all the other doors he had personally sealed the day before, and with the court at his side, went straight to the princess's chamber and spoke thus to her. "Princess Thirin, today we have all come to ask you to speak a word to the great prophet, imploring him to pardon the minister whose lack of faith angered him." "Your Majesty," she answered, "I know who he is. Muhammad himself made it plain to me." Then she recounted the very words I had told her, that henceforth, if anyone dared doubt the union between her and the great Prophet Muhammad, he would die, for the Prophet himself had solemnly sworn it. The 114th Night. Hearing this, King Bahman turned to the assembled court and said in a voice both grave and curious, "Even if we once refused to believe what our eyes have seen, now that our ears have heard it, is that not enough to make you certain that Muhammad is indeed my son-in-law? You have heard him speak. He told my daughter that he raised the storm to punish that wretched man for his lack of faith. Every minister and noble present took this as plain truth, as firm as a nail driven into wood. They all knelt and begged the princess to say a word in their favor, to petition the prophet to forgive the minister. Princess Thirin cheerfully consented. At that time, I had eaten up the provisions I had set aside. My purse was quite empty, not a coin left. The high prophet, whom I played so well, was at his wits' end, not knowing how we would live for the days ahead. When a thought occurred to me, one night, I said to Princess Thirin, "My dear princess, we have neglected one ceremony that is proper between husband and wife. You have not yet given me my bridal portion, and that troubles me a little. My beloved betrothed, do not trouble yourself," she replied. "In the morning, I will only need to ask my father, and the steward will bring to me all the treasure from his storehouse." "No, no," I hastened to stop her. "There is no need to speak to your father. I care little for vaults of treasure. I have no taste for worldly wealth. Give me only a few pieces of jewelry. That will suffice as your dowry." Princess Thirin meant to give me all the jewels she wore, to make her marriage to the high prophet complete. Yet I chose only 2 large diamonds, and the next day I brought them to the city and sold them to a jeweler in Ghazna. By that means, I had more than enough to go on to playing the part of the great Prophet Muhammad. Nearly a month passed, and I lived with pleasant ease as the princess's prophet husband, when envoys from a neighboring realm came to Ghazna. They came on the king's behalf to ask for Princess Thirin's hand as their queen. In the audience, when the envoy made his proposal, King Bahman said, I cannot accept your sovereign's request. I have already given my daughter in marriage to the Prophet Muhammad." The envoy, thinking the king had gone mad, hastened back home. The foreign king, upon hearing the tale, at first suspected that the ruler of Ghazna had lost his senses, but then he took it as an insult. Bahaman's refusal looked like scorn toward him. Angered, he raised a great army and marched in fury against Ghazna to punish this affront. That king, named Kaksum, was far mightier than Bahaman. Furthermore, he was slow to marshal his forces when threatened, and so Ghazna could not meet him properly. After several skirmishes and defeats, the army of Ghazna was forced to allow King Kaksum's troops to draw close. They encamped upon the plain directly before Princess Thirin's castle. Kaksum planned to storm Ghazna at once and to defeat Bahaman within his own capital. Yet when Kaksum's army reached the plain, night fell, and the soldiers needed rest. So the king ordered camp to be made and decided to begin the siege at first light. Meanwhile, King Bahaman received reports of the enemy's great numbers and fierce prowess, and fear took hold of him. He called his council together to devise a plan. One minister with a broken leg spoke boldly. "Your Majesty, I am surprised you are so troubled by this trivial matter. Is there any monarch in the world, let alone this upstart Kaksum, who would dare to frighten the father of the Prophet Muhammad? Sire, I think you should but ask your son-in-law for his aid. Let the High Prophet be entreated. He will surely confound the invaders. Indeed, it is his duty, too, because he married your daughter. Our foes have found excuse for aggression and disturbed the peace of our people." Even though his words were meant to provoke, King Bahaman took them to heart. He nodded and said, "You speak truth. We must entreat Muhammad. I will beg him to drive back that valiant host. I trust he will not refuse my plea." With that, he went straight to the princess and said, "My child, at dawn tomorrow, Kaksum's army will attack. I fear they will take our city. I come to ask Muhammad's help. Use whatever influence you have with him. Beg him to aid your father in defense. Let us both together implore him to grant us succor." "Sire," the princess replied, "it will be no difficulty to ask the Prophet to help us. The invaders of King Kaksum will surely be scattered. Other kings will learn from this and henceforth hold you in reverence." "But," the king fretted, "it is late, and the Prophet has not yet appeared. Has he abandoned us?" "No, Father. Do not think he will forsake us when we need him," the princess soothed. "From on high, he has seen the enemy's dispositions, and perhaps has already devised how to strike terror and sow confusion among their ranks. And so it was that Muhammad indeed planned to act. For that very day, I had watched the enemy camp from afar and marked especially where the king's pavilion stood. I gathered many pebbles, small and large, and filled my wooden chest with them. At midnight, I caused the chest to fly up into the sky. It was easy to distinguish the king's tent among the rest, a very large yellow pavilion with a high domed roof, supported by 12 stout painted pillars set deep in the earth. Between the pillars were many lashings of rope and branches. The roof had 2 windows, one facing east and one south. All about the king's tent, the soldiers lay sleeping. So I lowered the chest near a window while no one noticed. Looking in, I saw King Kaxum sleeping upon a raised couch, his head upon a square satin pillow. I flung a great stone that struck the king upon the head and wounded him grievously. He cried out in pain. The officers and guards awoke in alarm. They rushed in to find the king's head streaming with blood, and the monarch almost senseless. A great clamor arose through the camp. No one could tell what had befallen him. Rumor ran that the king had been mortally struck, though by whose hand none knew. While they scoured the camp for the culprit, I sent the chest high above the clouds and flung pebbles down upon the soldiers' tents all around. Some men were wounded and cried out. It seemed as if a hail of great pebbles had rained from the heavens. The news spread through the army, and to confirm the terror, I kept scattering stones. The whole host was seized with dread. From commanders to common soldiers, all believed the high prophet was enraged and had sent these signs as warning. They feared some greater calamity yet to come. Thus, the invaders of King Bahaman took to flight in panic, fleeing so hastily that they left behind tents, treasure, and much of their gear.